masks and Lysol. I mean, these are people who are successful. And I said to my fiance, I'm out of here. I am not living like this. We weren't allowed on the beach. We had to wear masks. They used air patrol to monitor us. We had to stay walking. We couldn't sit. Could only be on the wet sand. They filled in the skate parks with sand. Like, people don't know what really happened in Los Angeles. And I knew too much. I'm out of here. But I didn't know where to go, so we got a big RV, and I had 3 geriatric pets. And we got an RV because I didn't know how bad we were being gaslit in Los Angeles. I was like, the whole country like that? So we went through Arizona, we went through New Mexico. I went through the whole COVID experience across the country and like watched it, and then started building my team because I was like, where's not everybody's like that. So having to build the team all the way out. So that's how I left my house. Got to Arizona, then I called the realtor. I never went back. Stuff and everything. Other than my personal belongings that we put in the motorhome, I never went back.
Oh, wow.
Never went back. Called on the Ring doorbell and the camera, called my friends and said, go in, take what you want. I'm not coming back.
Wow.
And I didn't tell so many people, I didn't even tell that I even left. People are now recognizing that I'm now in Florida or in Nashville. Yeah. So I was like, I am not living through this. This is like being locked into a movie that I know the ending, and I don't want to sit through this. So I left. Yeah, and I've been.
It's amazing that you left everything behind.
Yeah, I just yeah. I honestly, I felt scared. It was so controlling. I'm at the grocery store one week, and next week you've got footprints. You can just start rolling whenever you're ready, and they're perfect. They had footprints all the way on the driveway. People were getting into fist fights. I mean, I lived in West Los Angeles on the border of Santa Monica. Like, I've been there for 20 years, and the mind psychosis that hit was, I thought I was on a crazy farm. It was so unbelievable. The change, and people were paranoid. I'd have to call the hairdresser and be like, "Are you doing the underground economy?" Like, who talks like that?
This is Front and Center with your host, Jacquie Jordan.
Entertainment and pop culture expert Jacquie Jordan is with us.
2-time Emmy-nominated Hollywood producer Jacquie Jordan.
We are the show where we talk with the change agents, the storytellers, and the activators, making impact from behind the scenes.
Welcome to Front and Center. We are the show where the change agents, the storytellers, and the activators from behind the scenes join us now, front and center. Gal Gadot came public with the fact that she had to have surgery for a blood clot. Also, a lot of opponents, proponents, conversation on social media discussed the fact that she had really pushed the shot or the jab and the correlation between the shot, the jab, and the blood clot. And nobody knows more about that than my guest, Dr. Sherri Tenpenny, who I would consider an American hero. But the gear up was already in place, and like I said, my superhero power is media narratives, and I watched every one of Andrew Cuomo's press conferences. I watched every one of Donald Trump's press conferences, because I was like, I was just trying to catch the momentum of the lie that was going on.
It's too bad you didn't do like a whole like a video documentary of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Before you left, you know, like you said, nobody realized how bad it was, and are people willing to do that again?
Right?
You know, this Dr. Wen person, I just did a video about her this morning. She is the deepest control state person I think I've come across. She's worse than Birx. She might be worse than Fauci. Have you heard any of her crap?
Yeah.
Who is she? She came out of nowhere. Where have you been in the last 5 years, chick? When the rest of us have been out on the main line fighting all this stuff. And she's like, bird flu, it's out there, it's everywhere. We just haven't been testing, and everybody's got to start testing again. And I have 2 children, a 1 and a 4-year-old, and I can't wait till they're old enough to get a COVID shot. And she's like this guy, I don't remember his name. I'd look on my phone. But he out on X did a complete deep dive about her. He laid it all out, where she went to school, when she did these things, how she got on the board of 3 pharmaceutical industry companies, mean, she's only like in her like late 30s, early 40s,
yeah,
you know.
late 30s.
And then she's now she's like their main spokesperson. She's everywhere. And so I did I've been doing these little 2-minute videos that they go super viral when I put them out there. And it's just like, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, don't let it happen.
Well, do you feel that people are getting that this time with Round the Blue? Is there enough people? We hit critical mass of
I think that quite frankly we probably have. I just think that it's the silent minority. It's the silent majority.
Yes.
It's the people that they just have made up their mind for themselves and their families, their kids. They're not going to put their kids back in mass. They're not going to do any of that nonsense. And I think especially since Trump won by such an overwhelming landslide, it tells me what the mindset of the country is. And I think that there are only still a handful of people like me and you and other people that are big, loud, all over the internet, doing things like that. But I think that there's millions of people that have just said,
you're not going to deal with it.
And I think the biggest thing they're concerned about is now understanding what the death rate is and how it's continuing to climb. And when you look yourself in the mirror in the morning, how do you say, is today my last day?
Right.
Like so it's kind of hard to come out with, admitting you were wrong when you know that what you did may be deadly. Well, it's one thing about being wrong because you sidewalked on the street.
Right.
It's another thing that you've allowed yourself to be injected in something that's endless.
Allowed your family, allowed your children. I mean, Gal Gadot is a really good example this week from a pop culture perspective. She played Wonder Woman.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
She came out, she was a very big vaccine pusher. She's Israeli. Israel's, right, has the most vaccinated people.
And kids.
Yeah, and population. And now she had a blood clot.
On her brain.
In her brain, which is very common for people who've been vaccinated. It's like people who recognize it clearly.
My business partner, I have several small businesses, and one of my business partner and one of my businesses, we've been together since 2008. So we've been through a lot of battles together. And I talked to him just before Christmas, and he said, well, I topped 200. I said, what do you mean you topped 200? He said, 201 people that I know have died from the shot.
Oh my God, I have not started to count them.
He said that he had told me a while ago when he had passed 175 people that he was stopping counting because it was just too much. Well, and these are people, he's got big circles because he's in several industries. And so he has big circles and has for a long, long time. And so he says that, these are either friends, spouses of friends, children of friends, friends of friends.
This is what, yes.
But more than 200 people. And he said, and all these people that are coming up to him going, oh my gosh, you are so smart, and you always figure all these things out. I made a big mistake. How do I get this stuff out of my body?
I know. And how you and I first met or were introduced to each other was about 2 years ago. I had done my mass exodus from California because I did not want to experience vaccine mandation like they did in the measles mandation. It was somewhere between 2016 and 2018. So I left and came here, and I've been a follower of dark field microscopy. I did it in my 20s and my 30s, and we'd see a little protein floating, and we were like, oh, I need to change my diet, right? So I had my blood done here in about 2 years ago and did not have the shots, and I was shocked by what I saw in my blood. And this is just from my experience of having done it in my life previously. And like I said, the way I would describe it, I said I got loaded with the hardware, not with the software. And I was like, but I didn't do it. I did everything I possibly could in terms of taking care of myself, leaving my geography, getting active, and my blood looked like a mess. And that's how we were first introduced before people started talking about it. Mm-hmm. And you have had some very specific thoughts about what we termed as vaccine shedding.
Well, from the very beginning, let me go back even further. When I first started researching and then speaking out and doing lots of courses on problems associated with vaccines, I was one of the people that almost single-handedly got people to eliminate immunization out of their vocabulary. I'm going to take my kids to get them immunized. No, you're not. You're taking them to be injected with foreign matter. It's called vaccinating them. It has nothing to do with increasing immunity. And so I preach this over and over and over again. And so you don't hear people say that very often anymore. They talk about vaccines and being vaccinated, but they don't talk about getting immunized because it's a lie and people just dropped it. So at the beginning of COVID, I tried to get people to stop with the shedding nonsense because the word it's not what it's happening. And I always use like chickenpox. If you're around people with chickenpox, remember when we were growing up, they had chickenpox parties. So like I have chickenpox, I'm around you, I spread the virus to you, you develop chickenpox. With COVID, if I shed the virus or whatever it is to you, you may get a long list of things. You don't get respiratory illness. You may start vaginally bleeding. You may have headaches. You may have palpitations. You may have all kinds of things.
Gut.
So you're not shedding the COVID virus. You're transmitting something that we to this day don't even know what it is. Nobody's doing any research on it. Who's going to put up the money to do the research? Because the people that would put up the money to do the research, they want you to be, transmitted upon.
Kill a million, make a trillion.
They want it, yeah, exactly. And so we don't know if it's really the spike protein, it's graphene oxide, if it's the lipid nanoparticles, if it's nanobot stuff. We don't know if it really is the mRNA thing that goes into you and you start replicating and we don't know. But we know something happens. And there's now that peer-reviewed study that Christian Northrup and Jim Thorpe and various people have put together on My Cycle Story. And I was part of that at the very beginning of how that all started. And they had over 11,000 people report that just being around or being in the presence of people who had had the COVID jab, that they started bleeding. These were postmenopausal women that started to bleed. These were regularly cycling women in their 40s who'd never missed a beat. Now their cycles were all over the place. We have case reports of people that bled so much that they needed blood transfusions, that they bled, incessantly. And sometimes, they would be bleeding like every day, or they'd get it stopped and start again as soon as they get around something.
Happened in my peer group.
So something happened in transmitting something. But we don't know what it is.
So we don't know if it's person to person. We don't know if it's environment. We don't know if it's air. We don't know if it's water. We don't know if it's food. We don't know if it's the coming through our meat.
It's got to be something person to person. Something.
That's my sense.
Because this was a friend of mine who had a very severe problem with, and she's in her early 40s, and every time she would go into a restaurant where there would be a bunch of people, probably most of them had vaccinated. This was early on in the process. Just walking into the restaurant, she'd start to not bleed, hemorrhage. And so
it's like the body reacted, and the body's like, I need to dispose of this right out of the blood or something.
Something's happening here. And so it was really disturbing, and a lot of people had similar experiences. So we don't really know what that is. And it tells you that there is something obviously in the blood, because early on in COVID, in Japan, they stopped accepting blood donors who had the COVID jab.
Yeah.
And so that told me and those that were paying attention that early on, the Japanese knew that if I gave a blood donation and I had been fully jabbed, two shots and a booster, my blood would be full of something that could be given to you if you were the recipient of my blood in a blood transfusion. So the Japanese stopped accepting donors who had been fully vaccinated. And so there was a big push on that here, really big push about, they called them the purebloods.
Yes.
And people, there were companies that tried to be set up to match donors and with a pureblood person with a pureblood person. And it gained some traction.
Even dating sites went for pure blood.
Yes. And it gained some traction. But, the Red Cross and all these people that make billions of each year out of the whole blood donating industry, they were never going to let that happen. And I have a first-hand story of a really good friend of mine whose son was in the hospital and very sick and needed a transfusion. And so they had lined up all of these unvaccinated pure blood people, and they had to go all the way up to the board of directors in the hospital and the attorneys said, no, we're not allowing you to do that.
Oh.
Your blood, people can donate blood, but we can't guarantee you that blood will get into your son.
Wow. I've heard that too. I've had friends needing blood transfusions too, where the hospital, like the person will say, I have someone who will donate their blood to me. And the hospital will say, I can't guarantee that we will give you that person's blood.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of, to me, that's game changer of like how you can be in a hospital. Like, I mean, I don't want to be in a hospital.
And I think most people don't. And it's really, and so people, because the people that are doing this dastardly injection thing, you notice I'm very careful to never call it a vaccine because it's not.
Yeah.
Because it's a bioweapon, it's a gene therapy, it's
experimental drug is sometimes what I'll say to somebody who's very resistant. I'm like, well, but it is experimental because it is experimental.
Because it is.
I'm like, it is, but it has experience. It is. It's like brand new, never been tested. You searched all protocols. Studies. Exactly.
We broke 2 out of 3 federal rules for allowing something to be released as an EUA. I mean, it has to be something that what you're treating is so much more toxic or deadly than what you're than like the jab, which it wasn't. I mean, the death rate was 0.2%, something like that. And we had no idea how deadly the shot was going to be. And there couldn't be anything else available to treat the illness. There's nothing else available. Well, we know there was ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, budesonide. And actually, I had found a research paper early on that researchers around the world, this was at the very, very beginning of COVID, so we're talking March of 2020, maybe at the beginning of April of 2020, researchers around the world had combed the medical literature, and they had found more than 100 FDA-approved products that were already available on the market that could have decreased the symptoms and perhaps either cured it, made them better, prevention, whatever. There were 100
they suppressed
things that were already there. And I read that paper, and it was gone. I mean, nobody ever talked about it again.
Speaking of, so, my superhero power is media narratives. So I'm a big screenshotter because for that exact reason. I see something, and then it's gone. I was in Los Angeles in 2018, and UCLA did a paper saying that COVID was already in Los Angeles. I ended up with the worst respiratory. I'm the canary in the coal mine. Like, I'm just one of those sensitive people. Like, I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna experience it first. But because of my sensitivities, I'm like, this is real. We need to pay attention. So 2018, I ended up with like the worst respiratory infection. I literally thought I was gonna die of a fever for 6 to 9 days. 6 weeks later, and I was a swimmer at the time. A master swimmer. So like, I had good lung capacity. Finally, they had lung x-rays. They offered me a COVID test. I had never even heard of the word. That was 2018.
Oh, wow.
UCLA did a paper that has since been pulled too, that COVID was in Los Angeles in that year, and everybody had respiratory infections. I had my hairdresser's granddaughter was born and then put in an incubator because she came out with a respiratory infection. Like, it was like all, chit-chat in LA, Los Angeles, but they did a paper, UCLA did the paper, and it was subsequently pulled, and I screenshot it. That's how we have to keep our data and not in the cloud.
Right.
But what I also think is really important here is talking about what is actually in the shot, because you said nanoparticles, graphene oxide, stem cell or aborted fetal cells are in the shot.
The mRNA itself,
yes.
Technology, yeah.
Yes. And, from a media perspective, I represented doctors who really thought the mRNA was a brilliant medical. And I always like, that's script writing, as a media perspective. I'm like, that's script writing. It's going in and it's rewriting your script, your organic scripting. And then the way I would describe graphene oxide to people is I said, when your car gets hit with water, and the water makes little bubbles, and it bubbles off your car. In the old days, it just would streak off your car, but now it bubbles. That's graphene oxide. It's in our car paint. And so that, to me, is my understanding. And I am not a doctor. This is like total like pedestrian understanding. But when graphene oxide, then I understand that that's how it bubbles in the system and creates these little, like what I see as little clots shooting through the body system. That's how I visualize it, understanding that graphene oxide is in paint in the car, and that's what it does with the water in the car.
Well, it's a carbon-based molecule that strings together in strings. And that, they've done all sorts of things with little particles of graphene oxide with magnets and frequencies and how they all form. There'll be like a bunch of little beads and they'll all form into little strings. And so we don't really know for sure what it does inside of the body. But we know it shouldn't be there. There's just I did a podcast interview with 2 research scientists. This was probably about a year ago. And they had done a lot of investigating in the shots. And the one guy, they made it clear that they were not doctors and they were not trying to say yay or nay. They were just reporting what they found.
Right.
And the one guy was a super egghead biochemist guy. And he was talking about the basic biochemistry of these jabs and the lipid nanoparticle stuff. And he said, and based on this, the guys who designed it, like they missed this step in the biochemistry and they just got sloppy or lazy or they forgot like the basic rules of biochemistry. And the other guy and I were going, I don't think they forgot anything. I think that they were looking for a loophole that they could actually capitalize on. And I wonder how these people who originally designed these jabs, the messenger RNA wrapped up in the lipid nanoparticles, and knowing that they had chemically altered it from Uridel to pseudouridel, which how I explain that is, our body makes messenger RNA all the time. If we cut ourselves or we have a bruise or, something like that, let's just say we cut ourselves and our body needs to make a bunch of proteins to heal that cut. Whether we cut ourselves out in the woods or we had a surgery, our body needs to make proteins. So our DNA sends out these little messenger RNA that has like a recipe written on it that says, make a protein. And so the messenger RNA goes out to your cells where you need those proteins and run it through an organelle inside of your cell called the ribosomes. And the ribosomes, I think about the ribosomes as like being a little protein factory. Mm-hmm. The messenger RNA delivers the instructions, and then the ribosomes create the protein. And it's a one-time deal. The messenger RNA delivers one message, and as it runs down the ribosomes and it out here creates a protein, it's like it goes through that cycle once. Because at the very end of the strip of messenger RNA, the nucleic acid on the end is a nucleic acid called uridel. And so it's a one and done sort of thing. So our body has to create a lot of messenger RNA if we have to have a surgery to do, because each messenger RNA makes one protein. Well, it took them about 10 years, but they synthetically modified that messenger RNA. So at the end, instead of uridel, like the one and done, they put a modified one called pseudouridel on the end. So when the messenger RNA goes to the ribosome, goes to the protein factory, it can run through the factory and then again and again.
So it's almost a command.
And again.
It's like code.
It's a turn it on, but there's no turning it off. And so that pseudouridel on the end makes it possible for that one little strip of messenger RNA to continually make proteins. So if you're continually making a spike protein, it was one of the things, when Bill Gates said initially, we're going to inject these things and you're going to be like your own vaccine factory. It was like his understanding of it. Your vaccine factory is that you're continually making spike proteins. And the spike protein, your body's supposed to make an antibody to it to neutralize it. Then we discovered or found out, or they nefariously knew it and didn't tell anybody, that the spike protein itself is a toxic molecule. It causes all sorts of toxicities. It can weave itself inside of our own DNA, can cross the blood-brain barrier and cause all kinds of neurological problems. It can clog up your kidneys. It's a really bad protein. But yet we've injected something into the body that will continually make them. And we've seen on autopsy studies now the presence of generating spike proteins through the ribosomes up to 28 months or more past the last injection.
And people are getting 2, 3, 4 injections of something that's already
boosters.
going.
Yeah, 10 boosters is where we are according to the CDC.
Oh.
Because the little gal who's head of the CDC, she was so proud announcing that this was the 10th booster that was now being prepared for the current variant that we don't really hear much about in the media now. And she's like, was so distraught because only about 20% of people were getting their next booster. And when I heard her say that, I thought, what's wrong with that 20%?
20%. Like is that many people? That many people?
Yeah. And so, but that's the problem. And I keep wondering, the people that actually did this and have seen the travesty of the, VAERS has over 1.6 million reports of vaccine injuries. And we have, by Ed Dowd's data, and he's crunched the numbers, somewhere around 17 million people worldwide have probably died at the hands of these shots. And to put that into context, remember back in 1976 when the swine flu came out, they had 53 deaths and pulled it.
Wow.
53 deaths.
Was enough to pull it.
And more than 150 reports of Guillain-Barré. And they within 6 weeks of releasing it, they pulled it from 53 deaths and 150 or so Guillain-Barré. Put that in context within 1 year, we had over 500,000 people injured. And we had more than 45,000 people that were dead. This was like in 2021 data. And where we are now, 5 years out, it just continues to climb. I did a webinar in May, and then I repeated it again in July of 21, called the 40 mechanisms of injury, how the COVID shot can make you sick or kill you. And it's still available. You can still go out and listen to it. It's on in our website. But I said then that I divided these 40 mechanisms of injury into 4 categories. The first one was sudden death, because we had this big spike of people that died within the first 48 hours of getting a COVID jab.
Yes.
The second one was spike protein disease. That was going to take 3 to 5 years because as you continue to make more and more spike protein, 3 to 5 years, and about 5 years out, we were going to see this big increase in deaths, which is where we are right now, what we're seeing with people that are still dropping over dead with heart attacks or myocarditis or
getting like their cancers was in remission.
Well, wait a second, wait. So that was the second part was spike proteins, that they're now actually even giving that a label of calling it a spikeopathy.
Oh.
That they're actually classifications of diseases caused by spike proteins. The third category was autoimmune disease. That was going to be in about 10 years, and we're already starting to see that in the. They've already reported 50 new autoimmune diseases they've never seen before. Either they've never seen it before, or they've never seen it in this age group before. And most of the current drugs to treat those autoimmune diseases, these new diseases don't respond to that. Then the fourth category is turbo cancers, like what you said, the infertility problems, the recurrence of the turbo cancers. And the turbo cancers are happening, in younger and younger people.
I've got family members in their 20s.
Yeah, we have a young man, a young boy in our local community in Cleveland. He was 13-ish. On Friday or Saturday morning, had played in a soccer tournament. Got up on Monday morning, said he didn't feel good, had a low-grade fever. Mom took him to the doctor. He got just a CBC, just a normal CBC. He had leukemia. He died in a week, within 1 week. And that's how they diagnose the turbo cancers.
That's what they're calling it, as leukemia. To me, I look at it as self-replicating.
Yeah, probably.
It's just it's over-replication.
But these solid tumors and things that they're having, like lung cancer and colon cancer.
I've seen a lot of middle-aged women get colon cancer in the last couple of years and have to have like chunks of colon taken out. And colon cancer is big right now.
Colon cancer is big. Ovarian cancer is big. Prostate cancer is big. The solid tumors, the reproductive organ things are really, really big, because we know that the lipid nanoparticles had a predilection of going into reproductive organs. But this term turbo cancer, up until COVID, had never been in medical language before. No. Or if it had, it was so rare that it wasn't really a thing, that you didn't really, think about it. Like you may see one patient that's like, wow, they were diagnosed and they died so quickly. But that was a rare and unusual thing. Now it's common, and it's happening everywhere, and it's happening in all age groups. And the definition is that from the time they're diagnosed until the time they die are anywhere from months to weeks to days from when the diagnosis is. So that oncologists don't even really have time to do a full workup on metastatic disease or tumor typing or any of those sorts of things, that they see if any of their regular armamentarium would work, or any of the turbo cancers. There's a big push right now that cancer is caused by parasites.
Yes.
It's a big push about that. And I believe that that's true. I think that's true. And I would give that a caveat. We know that was true.
I mean, I saw parasites in my blood.
Yeah, exactly.
From that.
And we know that was true pre-COVID.
Yes.
Is it still true with these turbo cancers caused by spike
Yeah,
protein?
and I always think of, parasites being attracted to heavy metals. So the more heavy metals we have in our system, that we tend to have more parasites. We have heavy metals in these shots. So I don't know if it's a cause or a condition, but they're definitely, in my pedestrian witnessing of it, seem to be very part of it. I know for me, what I experienced was leaky gut syndrome. Leaky gut was what I experienced when I had what are we calling it? We're not calling it shedding, but when I had
transmission.
When I was transmission to pawn, which is like the ultimate violation, I'll just say, to have had that experience. But leaky gut was what I had. So I had to, do parasite cleanses and detox heavy metals and some of those the old-fashioned ways that we learned to do it. But then we're dealing with something that's more sophisticated than what we were doing 10, 15, 20 years ago with heavy metal exposure.
Yeah, and I think that there's a lot of concern among people that, for whatever reason, got the jab but didn't really want it.
Many people. Oh my gosh, so many people.
So either they were coerced because they wanted to keep their job,
they wanted to see their grandchildren,
or they wanted to travel. And it's like, to me, it's like me.
Yes,
it's all about me. And, I got to do this for me. Yeah. Well, maybe, it's like I said in a lot of the speaking engagements that I was in, it's like, so you had to get this jab to keep the job that you've been complaining about for the last 20 to 25 years.
You couldn't wait 1 year. I would say to people, just wait 1 year. You get the shot, wait to travel, take the trip 1 year. Can you not? No instant gratification. Can you just wait 1 year? And let's just see how it plays out with all of these shots. Let's just see what happens a year from now. 1 year. Can you not?
What response did you get?
Shock. Because people never even thought of waiting. I said, just wait and see. Do you have to be the first person to do it? Let's just see what happens a year from now. Let's see if we're wrong. I mean, because the evidence is 1 year later, 2 years later, now 3 years later is so everywhere. It's hard to deny it. I mean, it's been painful to witness people with their children or seeing, 30-year-old mothers dying, passing, and leaving children without parents because, they were so, we've got to save old people and get it. Or I need, the travel thing was huge. I was like, can you not wait? Can you not wait 1 year to travel? Let's just see how this blows open. So yeah,
Yeah, and I would say, people say, well, I got to see my grandkids. So I said, well, is seeing them necessarily having them sitting in your lap? And we have technologies now called FaceTime.
And we had to wait a year before. Everybody was separated anyway. So it wasn't like we didn't sacrifice the separation already. Those belief systems and the media narrative of that programming was so cognizant dissonance because we did all separate. We all separated. We were mandated to separate and have Thanksgiving alone. And if you lived in California, you were only allowed to have 3 people at Thanksgiving in one particular year. Seriously,
what that reminds me of? I did a thing, and I don't think I can remember all of them because I had 10 or 12 of them at one point in time. But I did this little monologue called "The Smartest Virus and the Smartest Virus Ever." Smartest virus ever. It knows what time it is. It knows that after 10 o'clock, it's more virulent. It can count the number of people in the room. It knows that on the 17th is it's all over. It can read a calendar.
You can walk from the hostess station to your table with your mask on, but you're okay to take your mask off.
It could tell how it measured heights. When you were high up here, it was really deadly. When you're sitting at your table, it was
okay.
Exactly. And I had this whole big sort of a monologue about the smartest virus ever because all of it was so nonsensical.
And now we've seen, even Dr. Fauci has come out and said there was no science behind the social distancing and the masking at all.
Well, the masking, we know that there's more, and now they're calling for that again.
Yeah, I know.
And so those of us that know have got to be really heavy-handed on the more than 150 studies, published studies that have shown that the masks do nothing.
Yeah.
Do nothing except make the person who's wearing them sick.
Yeah.
With the stuff that you're breathing in.
Oh, and
I used to say it's like, you have a mask on and you're talking. Mm-hmm. It's like wiping your face with your saliva all day long.
Oh, it's
like
disgusting.
spitting in a cloth and wiping it on your face all day long.
Disgusting.
So, and we've got to really be heavy-handed as this bird flu
Like
thing
you wouldn't
goes
use
forward.
it. You wouldn't reuse your Kleenex over. If you blew your nose in your Kleenex, you would not reuse it.
Right.
That's what a mask is.
Right. Now, I'll tell you something about the masks. I found out by accident is that I was on an airplane and I got off the plane. I took the mask off and I stuck it in my pockets. I always travel in a sweatsuit when I'm going somewhere. So I ripped the thing off, stuck it in my pocket because it was the only time I ever
Me
wore a
too.
mask.
It's the only time I did too.
And I forgot about it and ran it through the washer. And when I found it and pulled it out, it was clean. It smelled good. It was lovely. So you could reuse them. And so I thought, how many times can I run this through the washer before it really falls apart? 10 times.
Oh.
So I'm thinking about all the environmentalists, about all the garbage of all these masks.
It bothered me too.
And all that stuff was laying. And so every time I got on an airplane, I wanted to go up to the front, grab the microphone, and say, all you people that are wearing masks, don't throw them away when you get off the plane. Take them home and wash them. They smell better. All the chemicals are gone. You've cleaned off it, whatever spit you have on it, and you're not contributing to bio-waste.
It was not going to, because it's not going to biodegrade for
exactly,
a decade or
so
plus.
you can wash them. And they were lovely and they smelled good. Unlike pulling it out of a box and they got that chemical smell and all that stuff,
it's terrible.
So, but masks don't work. PCR testing is a fraud. Yeah. They're starting to push that again. And, the jabs they're trying to do this. There have already been 3 approved bird flu vaccines that are just sitting on the shelf waiting for us to use them. 2007, 2010, and 2013. Now that's in the United States, and there are 7 more that have been approved in Europe that they're already ready to go. And so this is all this hype that's coming up. And my take-home message to everybody is, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, it's not going to happen. I am not letting this. I did something to harm my body, harm my spouse, harm my children, forced my parents to get these jabs if they wanted to see their kids. I made a bad mistake. I'm not doing that again. And we need to really, really blow back against this next round of nonsense that they're pushing on us.
So we've shared the same geographic over the last couple weeks, and it's everybody's talking about the fog, and there I always look again from the programming. There's the movie out, The Mist. I remember The Fog with Adrienne Barbeau in the 80s, and The Fog to me, as I said, I'm the canary in the coal mine. I had burning lips. I have the respiratory compromise from the weather, and it wasn't a moist, beautiful mist. It was it felt chemical to me. It felt very, very chemical. There's definitely been a lot of spraying, and you can't help but ask, is this how they're going to germinate the swine flu?
Bird flu.
The bird flu
Could very well be. I mean, there are several what I call gifts of COVID. One of the gifts of COVID is that for the first time in a very long time, Americans are waking up and paying attention to politics. We get the government we deserve. And if we take our hands off the steering wheel, because, Trump won and great, he'll handle things. No. We have to look what happened when they stole the election. They look at all the things that have happened from March of 2020 now until January of 25. All these different things. It's because we took the pressure off. So one of the gifts of COVID to me is that Americans are re-engaging in the political process, and that they're getting involved locally with their local elections, and getting rid of the woke school boards and all those sorts of things. So that's the one gift. Another gift is that they're paying attention to all of these things that before we just would kind of blow it off. not really pay attention to what they're spraying, to this fog thing, to whatever else is happening on.
Everybody's tuned in now to their environment.
Right. And one of the other gifts is that, people during COVID, they had like maybe a toddler at home, and then they got pregnant and they had another baby. But during COVID, and then they couldn't go to the doctor because the doctors wouldn't see them. They come, all the different things that happened, or they lost their job. They didn't have any health insurance. They just couldn't go. And that baby that they had during COVID is now 3, and they're unvaccinated, and they're perfectly healthy. They don't have snotty noses, ear infections, ADD. They don't have food dyscrasias. They don't have sensory integration issues. And they're like, wait a minute. My kids didn't get any vaccines during that period of time, and they didn't die. And in fact, they're healthy and thriving. So one of the other gifts of COVID really is that parents that are now really waking up, and I really dislike that term, but in this case, it's really true, that they've said that they saw the damage that these COVID jabs caused. And it's like, well, what else is in these other things? They're now saying that kids need to get 32 shots by 2 years of age.
I know, isn't that crazy? I mean,
insane.
but just like this idea that babies are born imperfect. Like just the concept of it. There's nothing more pure than a baby being born. And we have collectively and culturally believe now that our babies and our children are
defective.
Like on so many, we're willing to mutilate them beyond measure. I just find that that just doesn't even make sense to me. Like it's like
I saw a cartoon one time that said it was like there was a brand new baby. This was the cartoon, and they were holding this brand new baby. They were just leaving the hospital, and there was a figure of God in this cloud behind them, looking down on them and saying, "Oh my goodness, I forgot the immune system. We must vaccinate." Because it was such a joke.
Yes, exactly.
So I think the third gift of COVID really is parents are looking at these other shots.
Yeah.
And looking what's in them. One of the courses that I do on our website on learningforyou.org, it's how to read a package insert. So it shows people what to do. And I think that more and more people are questioning and saying, I don't even want that crap in there. And I'm hoping that now with this new administration, that perhaps with the first time we can blow up, and first time in 200 years of misinformation, of lies, of myths, that we can blow this open, that people can see. And I think that we need to do it from a perspective of, you've never been told the truth. Let me tell you the whole story about this whole vaccine schedule. If you still want to inject your kids with poisons, I guess that's up to you. But you need to have this information. Yeah. And I'm really, really hoping that we can do that. Now, the pharmaceutical industry is going to defend that beyond all arms.
We know that. And we don't have a whole lot of time to talk about it, but we both experienced censorship, so we know what that is. You have a book coming out at the end of the month.
Well, probably will be more towards like the first part of February. That right now, the working title on the book is Zero Accountability, a deep dive into public health, pandemics, and vaccines. And they've had zero accountability through all of it for much longer than the present tense. And I've done thousands of hours of research to dig this out. So I'm really hopeful that people will be able to read it and will just reinforce their fool me once, not going to happen, and this is not ever going to happen to me again. And they can use that, sort of like Naomi Wolf's The Pfizer Papers, to use it to blow up this whole nonsense that we've had to experience for the last 5 years and more.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here on Front and Center.
No, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So
And thank
much.
you for so much for being a hero.
Oh, this is
truly
another day in my life.
The hero to many of us. Thank you so much for joining us here on Front and Center. Please feel free to subscribe to us here, and you can find us on any place that you listen to your favorite podcast, and also look below for any of our television airing listings. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jacquie Jordan.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Front and Center with Jacquie Jordan podcast. Please subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on Instagram at TVGuestpert. We'd love to hear from you.